I was about to destroy 3 years of invisibility for a creature who could drain me dry before I finished my next breath. My hand trembled as I folded the cocktail napkin, the Cyrillic letters I'd scrawled looking almost decorative against the cream paper like some artful flourish instead of the warning that could end me. From across the velvet-draped dining room of Lumière Noire, Varro Cassivar sat with the stillness of something carved from marble and menace, his pale fingers wrapped around a crystal glass filled with something darker than wine. His fiancée laughed at something on her phone. The sound too bright, too practiced. Like wind chimes in a graveyard. Behind them, the French Quarter sprawled in a haze of neon and jazz, a city that had always known how to hide its monsters in plain sight. "Refill on your wine, Mr. Cassivar?" I asked, my voice steadier than it had any right to be. My accent still clung to the edges of my English. 3 years in New Orleans, not quite enough to sand down the Russian vowels my mother had pressed into my bones. He didn't answer immediately. Vampires never did. They had time, centuries of it, so they moved through conversations like honey through cold air. His mercury silver eyes lifted to mine, and for a half-second, I forgot how to breathe. Not because he was beautiful, though he was platinum hair swept back from aristocratic features that belonged on old coins, the kind collectors murdered each other over. No, it was the weight of his gaze, ancient, assessing, the kind of look that saw through skin and bone straight down to the quivering truth underneath. "Not yet, Serafina." He remembered my name. Of course he did. Predators always catalogued their prey. I set the napkin beside his untouched dessert menu, fingers brushing the linen just long enough to make it look accidental, professional, forgettable. Then I stepped back, tray clutched to my chest like a shield, and prayed to saints I'd stopped believing in the day I left Volgograd. 25 minutes earlier, I'd been in the staff bathroom on the 2nd floor, counting tips and mentally rehearsing answers to questions the INS officer would ask next week. "How long have you been in the United States? What is your current employment status? Do you have family here?" "Yes, my 16-year-old sister who was supposed to be safe, anonymous, invisible, just like me." Then the door swung open, and a pair of Louboutins clicked across the black marble tile. I knew those shoes. Everyone who worked at Lumière Noire knew them. Myers White wore them like a declaration of war against gravity and good taste, blood-red soles that cost more than I made in a month. Her perfume hit first. Something French and suffocating, the kind that announced I can afford to smell like crushed diamonds. I was in the far stall, door locked, feet pulled up onto the toilet seat out of habit, an old instinct from hiding in bathroom stalls in Moscow, when the men in black coats came asking questions about bloodlines and genetic anomalies. "I told you, he's at his usual table." Her voice drifted over the partition, low and sharp. American accent, the kind that came from boarding schools and Senate fundraisers. "3rd floor, corner booth by the balcony doors. You'll have a clear line once he settles in." My hand froze over my phone. I stopped breathing. Water ran. She turned on the tap not to wash her hands, but to blur her words. The bathroom at Lumière Noire was all hard surfaces, marble, brushed nickel, floor-to-ceiling mirrors. Nothing soft enough to swallow sound. Even whispers echoed. "The others are already positioned," she continued, voice dropping lower. "2 in the kitchen, they've got the delivery uniforms. 1 at the bar, nursing bourbon. The rooftop team is across the street. Silver rounds, blessed. When he stands to leave, you'll have maybe 8 seconds before his security moves." My pulse hammered so hard I could feel it in my teeth. She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. Then her tone shifted, sliding into something else entirely, a language that made my blood run cold. Not French, not Spanish. Something older, harsher. The cadence of vampire hunter argot, the pidgin Latin and Old Germanic that the purifiers used when they didn't want their prey to understand. I caught fragments, sanctified rounds, ashwood stakes, extraction protocol. I stayed frozen, legs cramping, lungs burning, praying she wouldn't notice the shadow of my boots beneath the stall door. The tap shut off. Heels clicked toward the exit. The door sighed open, then closed with a pneumatic whisper. Only when I was sure she was gone did I unlock the stall and stumble out. My reflection in the mirror looked pale, wild-eyed dark hair escaping its bun, the cheap black dress we all wore hanging off my frame like a mourning shroud. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the sink. "Not my problem," I told myself. "Keep your head down, protect Anya, stay invisible." But my fingers were already moving, scrawling Cyrillic across a napkin I'd pulled from my apron. "Vasha nevyesta predala vas. Ani na pozíciách. Your fiancé sold you out." They're in position. I didn't know why I was doing it. Varro Cassivar wasn't some helpless victim. He was an 800-year-old apex predator who'd ruled the southern vampire territories since before Louisiana was a state. He'd survived the Inquisition, 2 world wars, and God knew how many assassination attempts. But Myers White was human. Senator Harold White's daughter. The engagement was supposed to be a political alliance, the cornerstone of the covenant, the fragile truce between vampires, witches, and the mortal government. If she was setting him up, it wasn't just murder. It was the match that would burn the entire South. And Anya was still in high school, still using the fake name I'd given her, still small enough to disappear into the foster system, or worse, if I got deported. Stay invisible, my survival instinct screamed. But I'd already folded the napkin. By the time my break ended and I stepped back onto the 3rd floor, it wasn't hard to match faces to threats. The man at the bar in the tailored suit, nursing the same bourbon for 40 minutes, his eyes tracking every exit. The 2 delivery men lingering near the kitchen doors, their uniforms too clean, their posture too military. I didn't need to see the weapons to know they were there. Varro sat with his back to the balcony doors, exposed, trusting. His security detail, Lucien Baudelaire, his second in command, stood 10 feet away, scanning the room but not seeing what I saw, because they weren't looking for betrayal from the woman who wore Varro's engagement ring like a crown. I crossed the dining room, tray balanced, heartbeat thundering. Myers was typing something on her phone, her smile sharp and satisfied. She didn't look at me. Humans like her never did. We were furniture, replaceable. I set the napkin beside Varro's glass. His hand stilled mid-reach. For a beat, nothing happened. Then his fingers brushed the paper, unfolding it with the kind of casual precision that came from centuries of practice. His eyes, those inhuman mercury eyes, scanned the Cyrillic script. For half a second, nothing changed. Then everything did. His jaw tightened. Just barely. A muscle ticking beneath skin, too perfect to be real. No flinch, no gasp. No dramatic glance toward the balcony, or the bar, or the kitchen. Just that tiny, lethal shift the moment a predator recognizes a trap. His gaze lifted, met mine, and I knew, with the sick certainty of someone who'd just stepped off a cliff, that I'd either saved his life or signed my own death warrant, possibly both. Varro's eyes held mine for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for me to see recognition flicker behind that mercury gaze, long enough for his hand to move toward the edge of the table where I knew he kept weapons even civilized vampires carried, long enough for me to think maybe, just maybe, I'd done the right thing. Then the world exploded. The first shot didn't sound like the movies. It was sharper, cleaner, the crack of expensive death cutting through Vivaldi and polite conversation. The balcony door behind Varro's head shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces, and my body moved before my brain caught up. I lunged. Not gracefully. Not heroically. Just the desperate, graceless dive of someone whose survival instincts had been honed in bathroom stalls and back alleys. Someone who'd learned young that hesitation was another word for dead. My shoulder slammed into Varro's chest, impossibly solid. Like hitting a marble statue, and we went down together in a tangle of limbs and overturned crystal. Something punched through my left shoulder. Hot, sharp. The kind of pain that arrived a full second after the damage, like my nerves needed time to process what the hell just happened. Then the screaming started. The man at the bar dropped his bourbon and pulled a modified crossbow from inside his jacket. The 2 delivery men burst through the kitchen doors, blessed ashwood stakes in hand. Myers shrieked a performance worthy of Broadway and dove under the table. Around us, Lumiere Noir's elegant 3rd floor descended into chaos. Patrons scrambled for exits. Chairs crashed. Someone's wineglass shattered against marble, red spreading like a promise. Varro moved beneath me with inhuman speed, rolling us behind the overturned table, his arm banded across my back, pressing me flat against the floor as another shot spiderwebbed the wall where his head had been 3 seconds ago. "Stay down," he commanded, voice cold and absolute. That's when I realized I was bleeding on him. My blood, dark and weirdly luminous in the low light, was smeared across his jaw, dripping onto his perfect white shirt. Some of it had gotten into his mouth during the fall. His entire body went rigid. Across the room, Lucien Baudelaire moved like violence set to music. Varro's second in command was a blur of controlled brutality, ancient and efficient and utterly merciless. The man with the crossbow didn't even have time to reload before Lucien's hand was around his throat, lifting him off the ground like he weighed nothing. The snap echoed even through the chaos. The 2 men from the kitchen fared worse. But I barely registered any of it because Varro had gone completely, unnaturally still above me. His pupils had blown wide, the mercury of his irises swallowed by black. His nostrils flared. When he looked down at me, there was something in his expression I couldn't name. Shock, hunger, recognition, maybe all three. "You're bleeding," he said, which was possibly the stupidest observation an 800-year-old vampire could make. "Silver bullet," I managed. My shoulder was screaming now, the pain sharpening from dull shock into something bright and jagged. "I think you're healing." His voice had gone strange, quiet, almost reverent. "You were shot with blessed silver 30 seconds ago and you're already healing." I tried to look at my shoulder, but the angle was wrong and my vision was starting to blur at the edges. Dark spots bloomed across my sight like ink in water, but I could feel it, the wrongness of accelerated cell regeneration, the itch and burn of flesh, knitting itself back together in ways human tissue absolutely should not. Varro's thumb brushed my collarbone, came away slick with blood. He stared at it like it was the most fascinating thing he'd ever seen. Then, deliberately, he brought it to his lips. The change was immediate. His eyes flared, not metaphorically, but actually flared. Silver light bleeding through the black of his pupils. Power rolled off him in waves, making the air taste like ozone and old metal. Around us, the few remaining light bulbs flickered and burst. Shadows deepened, grew teeth. "Impossible," he breathed. Then Lucien was there, crouching beside us, spattered in blood that definitely wasn't his. "We need to move. Now. Rooftop team is still active and the police will be here in 4 minutes." "The woman," Varro said, not looking away from me. "Myers? Gone. Slipped out during the first wave." Lucien's pale eyes, not as striking as Varro's but no less inhuman, flicked to me, then back to his master. "What about the girl?" "She comes with us." Varro gathered me up like I weighed nothing, one arm beneath my knees, the other supporting my back. The movement sent fresh agony through my shoulder and I bit down on a scream, tasting copper and salt. "Varro, she's human." "No." His voice cut through Lucien's protest like a blade. "She's not." The world tilted. Swam. I tried to focus on something, anything, the ornate tin ceiling, the velvet curtains now shredded by gunfire. Myers's abandoned phone glowing on the table, still open to whatever message she'd been typing. A message to whom? Her father? The shooters? "Anya," I whispered. "My sister. You have to—" "Address." Varro's face was very close to mine now. I could see the individual facets of his irises, the way the silver caught light that shouldn't exist. "Give me an address, and I'll have her picked up before anyone else finds her." I should have refused, should have lied, should have done anything except rattle off our apartment complex in Marigny, the one with the broken security camera and the landlord who didn't ask questions about cash payments. But the darkness was pulling at me now, warm and insistent, and Varro's voice had gone soft in that way that made disobedience feel impossible. "Apartment 4C, I heard myself say. "Anna Petrov. Don't scare her. Please. Lucien. Send Ophelia and Rafe. Tell them gentle extraction. No trauma." Varro's arms tightened around me. "And clear the maison. I want full lockdown protocol." "What are you?" "Her blood, Lucien." And now there was something almost like wonder in Varro's voice, buried under centuries of control. "I can feel dawn coming in 3 hours, and I don't care. I could walk outside right now and the sun wouldn't touch me." Silence. Then, luminous, Varro confirmed. I didn't know what that meant. Didn't know why Lucien's face had gone carefully, deliberately blank. Didn't know why Varro was looking at me like I was a problem and a solution and a miracle all at once. The last thing I remembered was being carried through the service entrance, past sous chefs and dishwashers who very deliberately didn't see anything, into the New Orleans night that smelled like jasmine and river rot and rain about to fall. Then nothing. I woke up in a bed fit for czars. Silk sheets, carved mahogany posts, a canopy of cream-colored fabric that probably cost more than my entire apartment. Through the window, too large, too clear, the kind of glass that shouldn't exist, I could see twilight settling over formal gardens and wrought iron gates. My phone said 2:17 p.m. The sky said sunset. "You're awake." His voice came from the shadows in the corner, where the light didn't quite reach. Varro stepped forward and I could see he'd changed clothes, dark slacks, a shirt rolled to his elbows. The blood was gone, but his eyes still held that strange light, like someone had lit candles behind Mercury. "Where?" My shoulder throbbed, but when I touched it, there was only smooth skin under clean bandages. No bullet wound, no scar, just a faint ache like a day-old bruise. "My home," The Maison Cassivar, though most people just call it the Garden District Estate. He moved closer, graceful and predatory. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. Your sister is downstairs with Ophelia. Unharmed, confused, angry, but safe. Relief hit so hard it felt like drowning. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. He sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the only evidence that he'd once been human. Your blood did something to me, Serafina. Something I didn't think was possible anymore. I manipulated time itself within these walls, made 2 p.m. look like dusk, so you'd wake in comfort rather than harsh light. I don't understand. Neither do I. Not fully. His hand reached out, stopped just short of touching my face. So I'll ask you once, and I'll know if you lie. What are you? Serafina Lazareva. What is your blood? And because I was tired of running, tired of lying, tired of being invisible and afraid, I told him the truth. Luminous. His expression didn't change, but something in the air between us shifted, sharpened. How long have you known? Since I was 13. Since the night men in black coats came to our apartment in Volgograd and killed my parents trying to take me. And you've been hiding ever since. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. Varro was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those impossible eyes. Finally, he said, "You saved my life tonight. That creates a debt. But your blood, what it can do that makes you the most valuable thing in this city. Every vampire, every witch, every monster with ambition will want to own you. Do you understand what that means? That I should have let you die? Probably." The corner of his mouth lifted. Almost a smile. "But you didn't. So now we both have to live with the consequences." Outside, the false twilight deepened. Somewhere in the house, I could hear raised voices, Anya screaming at someone in Russian and English. "What happens now?" I asked. Varro stood, moved back toward the shadows. "Now, Serafina Lazareva, you tell me everything. And I decide whether you're my salvation or my destruction." Varro's study looked like someone had taken an antebellum plantation library and dragged it kicking and screaming into the present century. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined walls painted the color of old money, filled with leather-bound volumes in languages I recognized, and several I didn't. A massive desk, mahogany, pre-Civil War if I had to guess, sat before French doors that opened onto the garden. But the security cameras tucked discreetly in the crown molding, and the biometric lock on the door told a different story. This wasn't just a room for reading, it was a fortress. "Sit," Varro said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs across from his desk. It wasn't a request. I sat. My shoulder still ached phantom pain where the bullet had torn through, even though the skin was smooth and unblemished now. Downstairs, Anya was probably terrorizing whoever had been unlucky enough to babysit her. My sister had inherited our mother's temper and our father's stubbornness, a combination that had kept us alive in Moscow and made us insufferable everywhere else. Varro settled into his chair with the kind of fluid grace that came from centuries of practice. He'd rolled his shirt sleeves back down, fastened them with cufflinks that caught the lamplight silver, which should have been ironic, except I was starting to understand that my blood had changed the rules. "Tell me about Luminous," he said. "I don't know much." Which was true, mostly. Just what my parents told me before they died. Start there. So I did. Not because I wanted to, but because something in his voice made lying feel like standing in front of an oncoming train, technically possible, but ultimately pointless. It's genetic, rare. Maybe 1 in every 10 million births, if that. The blood carries properties that temporarily negate vampire weaknesses. The words felt clinical, detached, like I was describing someone else's life. Sunlight, silver, compulsion. Wooden stakes, though I've never tested that one. My parents were scientists and Volgograd geneticists studying inherited blood disorders. They didn't know what I was until I was 13, and some of my blood got into a research sample. And then the directorate came. My hands clenched in my lap. That's what they called themselves. The Russian Supernatural Authority, government-sanctioned monsters who decided my blood was a strategic resource. They killed my parents in our apartment. Would have taken me too if my father hadn't. My voice caught. Even 3 years later, the memory tasted like copper and gunpowder. He bought us time. Me and Anya. Varro's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between us. "How did you get to America?" "Bribes, forged documents. A cargo ship captain who didn't ask questions when I offered him every ruble we had." I met his eyes. "We've been Anna and Serafina Petrov for 3 years. Quiet, invisible. I worked shit jobs, kept our heads down, made sure Anya stayed in school. And it worked. Until tonight. Until you decided to save a monster's life. Until I couldn't watch someone get murdered in front of me. I corrected. Monster or not. A knock at the door interrupted whatever he was about to say. Lucien entered without waiting for permission, his pale face tight with tension. "We have a problem," he said. "Konstantin Romanov just checked into the Hotel Monteleone. He's requesting an audience." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Or maybe that was just the ice in Varro's voice when he asked. "The collector is here? In New Orleans? Arrived 2 hours ago. Brought documentation, purchase contracts, blood debt transfers, the whole Imperial Russian nightmare." Lucien's eyes flicked to me. "He claims legal ownership of Serafina Lazareva and her sister under pre-revolution supernatural law. Says he bought their family's debt from the directorate." My stomach dropped through the floor. "That's not possible. We don't have any—" "Your grandfather," Varro said quietly. "What was his name?" "Dmitri. Dmitri Lazarev." The name felt like broken glass in my mouth. "But he died before I was born. Debts don't die with debtors, not in the old world." Varro stood, began pacing. "If Romanov has legitimate contracts, the covenant requires I honor them. Supernatural property law supersedes mortal jurisdiction." "Property." The word came out flat. Dead. "You're telling me I'm property. I'm telling you that's how Romanov will argue it. And if his paperwork is legitimate, I can't simply refuse him without breaking the very laws that keep this city from burning." Lucien cleared his throat. "There's one other thing. The girl Anya. She's still at school. If Romanov knows she's here, send Ophelia and Rafe, now." Varro's command cracked like a whip. "Full security protocol. I want her back here before Romanov realizes we've moved." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Anya. "Why are there weird goth people at my school saying you sent them?" I typed back with shaking hands. "Go with them. Trust me. I'll explain everything." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, this better be good. 20 minutes later, Anya stormed into the study like a Category 5 hurricane stuffed into a Catholic school uniform. Her dark hair the same shade as mine, the same as our mother's, whipped around her face as she took in the room, the vampire lord behind the desk, and me sitting there like I'd just signed away our lives. Which, in a way, I had. "What the actual hell, Sarah?" She switched to rapid-fire Russian, the kind we only used when we didn't want eavesdroppers. "You send vampires to my school? Mrs. Hernandez thinks I'm being kidnapped." I had to lie to her face. "Anya." I stood, caught her hands. "Listen to me. Last night at the restaurant, there was an attack. People tried to kill him." I nodded toward Varro. "I stopped it, and now we're in debt to a vampire lord." "Perfect. Great life choices. Sister. And now—" Varro interrupted smoothly, his Russian flawless and tinged with an accent I couldn't place. "You're both under my protection, which you're going to need, because a very dangerous man from your old life has come to collect what he believes he's owed." Anya's face went pale. "The collector? Konstantin Romanov? He found us?" "You know him?" I asked. Everyone knew about him. The other kids in Volgograd, the ones whose parents worked for the directorate, they'd whisper about him. The man who bought blood debts and genetic anomalies like trading cards. She looked at me, really looked, and I saw my baby sister understand what I'd been trying to protect her from all along. "Oh God, Sarah, what did you do?" Before I could answer, the television mounted on the wall flickered to life. Lucien had turned it on, and Myers-White's face filled the screen. She looked perfect, artfully mussed hair, designer clothes torn just so, bruises on her arms and neck that I knew for damn certain hadn't been there last night. "Escaped with my life," she was saying, voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "Varro Cassivar is a monster. He held me captive, manipulated me, threatened my family. Last night, when brave citizens tried to rescue me, he murdered them, in cold blood, in front of witnesses." The news anchor leaned forward with practiced sympathy. "And your father, Senator White, is calling for a federal investigation?" "My father wants justice. We all do. The covenant was supposed to protect humans, but it's just given vampires license to prey on us. That ends now." Varro turned off the television. The silence that followed was deafening. "So," he said, turning back to me, "here's what we're facing. Myers has turned the humans against me. Romanov will claim you under supernatural law, My rivals in the vampire community will see this as weakness. And the covenant, the peace I've maintained for 50 years, is about to shatter, unless we can prove Myers is lying and find a way to nullify Romanov's claim. And how do we do that? I asked. We don't. You do. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. I'll offer you a deal, Serafina. I'll protect you and your sister. I'll secure your immigration status. Make you legal. I'll keep Romanov at bay and weather whatever political storm Myers creates. But in exchange, you stay here. You let me study your blood, its limits, its capabilities. You help me understand what you are. So I trade one form of captivity for another. You trade uncertainty for security. And unlike Romanov, I'm offering you a choice. Anya grabbed my arm. Sarah, don't. What choice? I interrupted. Stay here and be your science project? Or get deported back to Russia where the directorate will dissect me? That's not a choice. That's just picking which monster gets to own me. Varro's eyes flashed silver. I don't want to own you. I want to understand you. There's a difference. Is there? He moved closer, and I felt it again, that pull, that strange awareness that hadn't been there before the blood. When his hand brushed mine, just barely, I felt an echo of something that wasn't my own emotion. Hunger, yes, but also fascination, and underneath it, buried deep loneliness so old it had calcified into armor. Yes, he said quietly. There is. I looked at Anya, whose expression clearly said this is a terrible idea, and then back at Varro, who was offering me the only lifeboat in a sea of worse options. Fine, I said. We stay. But I have conditions. Name them. Anya finishes school. Normal school, not some supernatural academy. She gets a life outside these walls, and if you ever make me feel like property, the deal ends and I'll take my chances with Romanov. Agreed. He held out his hand. Do we have an accord? I shook it. His skin was cool, dry, and the contact sent sparks racing up my arm, not unpleasant, just wrong enough to remind me that human and vampire weren't meant to touch this way. Then welcome to the Maison Cassivar, he said. Lucien will show you to your rooms. Dinner is at 7. We eat human food here. It's one of the small civilities that keeps everyone sane. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Myers' face on the television, or remembered the crack of gunfire, or felt phantom pain in my shoulder. Anya had finally passed out around midnight, exhausted from fear and fury in equal measure. But sleep evaded me like it always did in new places, in dangerous situations, in moments when staying alert meant staying alive. So I walked. The Maison Cassivar was enormous, room after room of antique furniture and oil paintings, and the kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. Eventually I found myself outside, in gardens that smelled like jasmine and night-blooming roses. The moon hung fat and silver overhead, painting everything in shades of pewter and shadow. That's where I found him. Varro stood in the center of the garden near a fountain, face tilted toward the sky, but something was wrong with the light. It wasn't moonlight falling on him. It was warmer, golden, impossibly bright. Dawn light. It's still night, I said, confused. He turned, and the smile that curved his mouth was the first genuine expression I'd seen from him. For everyone else. But your blood is still in my system, enough that I can bend reality inside my own walls, make 2 a.m. feel like sunrise. Do you know how long it's been since I saw dawn? 800 years? 843. He closed his eyes, breathing in air that shouldn't exist. I'd forgotten what it looked like. The color of it, the way it makes everything feel new. I moved closer, drawn by something I couldn't name. How long will it last? The effect will fade in another day or two. Unless... He looked at me, and there was want in his expression, raw and honest and terrifying. Unless you chose to make it permanent. I didn't agree to be your personal blood bag. I know, and I won't ask. But Serafina... He caught my hand, and that spark flared again, stronger this time. Through the blood bond, I felt what he felt. Not just hunger, gratitude, wonder, hope for something he'd thought lost forever. You've given me something I thought I'd never have again, he said. And I meant what I said earlier. I will not let them take you. Not Romanov, not Myers, not anyone. Why? The question came out smaller than I intended. Why do you care? He was quiet for a long moment, still holding my hand, still standing in impossible sunlight. Finally, because for the first time in 3 centuries, I remember what it feels like to want something beyond survival. And that, Serafina Lazareva, is either the most dangerous thing that's happened to me in 800 years, or the most important. The false dawn painted his face in gold and shadow, making him look almost human. Almost. Stay, he said. Not because you have to, but because you want to see what we might become together. I should have pulled away. Should have reminded myself that vampires were predators, and I was prey, and blood bonds were just biology, not destiny. But I didn't. Instead, I stood in his impossible garden, under his impossible sun, and wondered if maybe, just maybe, running was finally over. She arrived at sunset 3 days later, when the garden's false dawn had finally faded and reality reasserted itself with all its sharp edges. Isolde Theron didn't knock. Creatures like her didn't need to. I was in the library with Anya, helping her catch up on calculus homework she'd missed, when the temperature dropped so fast I could see our breath. Through the French doors, I watched a woman glide across the terrace like she owned it. She was stunning in the way ancient things were perfect and terrible, and utterly inhuman. Hair like spilled ink, skin the color of alabaster, wearing a dress that probably cost more than our entire apartment in Marigny had been worth. "Who the hell is that?" Anya whispered. "Trouble," Lucien said from the doorway, his usual composure cracking just enough to show real concern. "That's Isolde Theron. She rules the Northern Territories, and she's here to make Varro's life very difficult." I found Varro in his study, standing rigid as Isolde arranged herself in the leather chair like it was a throne. 2 other vampires flanked her, both male, both radiating the kind of casual violence that made my survival instincts scream. "Varro, darling." Her voice was honey and arsenic. "I heard about your little mishap. How embarrassing, to be nearly assassinated by your own fiancé. Makes one wonder if you're losing your edge." "Isolde." Varro's tone could have frosted glass. "You're early. The Covenant meeting isn't for 3 days. I wanted to see for myself." Her eyes gold, not silver, ancient beyond measure, slid to me standing in the doorway. "Ah, the pet human. How quaint. Tell me, does she perform tricks? Or is she just decorative?" Heat flooded my face, but I held my ground. Something about the way she said it, the casual dismissal, made me want to prove I was more than furniture. "She saved my life," Varro said, voice soft and dangerous. "Which is more than I can say for most of the vampire community lately." "Saved you? Or simply delayed the inevitable?" Isolde rose, circling me like a shark testing prey. "You've gone soft, Varro. This alliance with humans, this precious covenant, it's made you weak. Perhaps it's time for leadership that remembers what we truly are. Apex predators, not politicians. Is that a challenge?" "It's an observation. But if you'd like to make it official," her smile was all teeth, "I'll be happy to formalize things at the Covenant meeting. 3 nights from now. We'll see if your human pet's blood is enough to keep you relevant." She swept out with her entourage, leaving frost patterns on the windows and a silence sharp enough to cut. "She's going to challenge you," I said. "For your territory." "Yes." Varro's hand curled into a fist on his desk. "And if I can't prove I'm still strong enough to hold it, the Covenant collapses, and we're back to the old ways. Blood feuds, territory wars, the kind of chaos that gets cities burned. Then we make sure you win." He looked at me, something unreadable in his expression. "That would require you to be more than a waitress, Serafina. It would require you to fight. Then teach me." The training began that afternoon in a converted ballroom that Varro had turned into something between a dojo and a gladiatorial arena. Hardwood floors, mirrored walls, weapons mounted on racks that ranged from medieval to modern. "Vampires move faster than humans," Varro said, circling me. "We're stronger, more durable, and we have centuries of experience. You can't beat us with strength or speed, so you have to be smarter." He moved a blur, and suddenly he was behind me, hand at my throat. Not choking, just present. A reminder of how easily he could end me. "Pressure points," he murmured against my ear. "Even vampires have them. Solar plexus, throat, eyes. You can't kill us that way, but you can disable us long enough to run. I'm not interested in running. Then you're interested in dying." But he released me, stepped back. Again. This time, don't freeze. We drilled for hours. He'd attack, I'd counter or try to. Mostly I ended up on my ass, frustrated and bruised, while he explained in that maddeningly patient voice what I'd done wrong. But occasionally, I'd land a hit, catch him off guard, and when I did, I'd feel it through the blood bond surprise, followed by something warmer, pride. "Better," he said after I'd managed to flip him using his own momentum. We were both breathing hard now, close enough that I could see the pulse point in his throat, or where a pulse would be if he were human. You're learning. I had a good teacher. My heart was hammering, and not just from exertion. This close, I could smell him sandalwood and something older, earthier, could feel the echo of his emotions through our bond, control, restraint, and underneath it, hunger, not for blood, for something else entirely. His hand came up, almost touching my face. Then he pulled back, stepped away. Enough for today. But the damage was done. The awareness had been sparked, and ignoring it was becoming impossible. I found Anya that evening sitting on the estate's outer wall, legs dangling over the wrought iron fence, smoking a cigarette she'd stolen from God knew where. You know those will kill you, I said. Sierra, we're living with vampires. I think cancer is the least of my worries. She took another drag, blew smoke into the humid New Orleans air. Nice guy talked to me today. Said his name was Constantine. Ice flooded my veins. Anya, you didn't... Relax. I didn't go anywhere with him, but he said some interesting things. She turned to look at me, and there was accusation in her dark eyes. He said, you're the reason we've been running. That Mom and Dad died because of your blood, not some random attack. Is that true? It's complicated. Bullshit. She ground out the cigarette on the stone. You always say that. It's complicated. It's not safe. Trust me. Anya. But you never actually trust me with the truth. You just make decisions for both of us and expect me to follow. I'm trying to protect you. I'm 16, not 6. I don't need protection. I need honesty. Her voice cracked. Constantine said he could give me a real life, power, choice, things you've never given me because you're too busy playing martyr. He's a monster, Anya. He buys and sells people like trading cards. And Varro's what? A saint? He's using you, Sierra. Using your blood for power. At least Constantine's honest about what he wants. That's not fair. None of this is fair. She jumped down from the wall. You never asked if I wanted to run. Never asked if I was tired of being invisible. You just decided. And I followed because I was a kid, and I was scared. But maybe I'm tired of hiding. Maybe I want to be seen. She stormed back toward the house, leaving me standing alone in the garden. Feeling like I'd been gutted. I found Varro in his study an hour later, staring at paperwork he clearly wasn't reading. Anya hates me, I said from the doorway. She's a teenager. Hating you is part of the job description. But his voice was gentle. What happened? I told him. About Constantine's approach. Anya's accusations. The way she'd looked at me like I was the enemy. She's not wrong, I admitted. I never asked what she wanted. I just assumed running was best. But what if I've been keeping her prisoner all along? Just a different kind than Constantine's offering? Varro stood, crossed to where I was falling apart in the doorway. You saved her life. You gave up everything to keep her safe. That's not imprisonment, that's love. Love that's suffocating her. Then let her breathe. His hand found mine, and the bond flared bright between us. But don't let her go. There's a difference. I looked up at him. This ancient creature who somehow understood teenage rebellion better than I did. How do you always know what to say? 800 years of practice. His thumb traced circles on my palm. And because I feel what you feel, remember? Your pain becomes mine. That doesn't bother you? It terrifies me. He pulled me closer, close enough that I could feel the coolness of him against my heat. Serafina, I need to ask you something. And you can say no. What? Let me drink from you again. At my expression, he continued quickly. Not for power, for connection. The bond we have, it's incomplete, shallow, but if I drink from you properly, with intention, it deepens. We'd be able to feel each other completely. No barriers, no secrets. Why would you want that? Because I'm tired of being alone. The admission seemed to cost him. And because you are too. He was right. I was so tired of carrying everything by myself. Of hiding, of pretending I was strong enough to protect Anya and myself and navigate this impossible world without help. Okay, I whispered. He led me to a sitting room adjacent to his study, private, intimate, with soft lighting and furniture that invited closeness. I sat on the velvet sofa, heart racing. Are you sure? He asked one more time. Yes. He knelt before me, and there was something almost reverent in the gesture. His hand cradled the back of my neck, tilting my head to expose my throat. Tell me if it's too much. Then his mouth was on my skin, and the world exploded into sensation. It wasn't pain, not exactly. More like every nerve igniting at once. Pleasure and pressure and connection so intense it felt like drowning. Through the bond, I felt everything he felt. 8 centuries of loneliness, of seeing everyone he'd ever loved turn to dust. The weight of leadership, the fear that he was failing, that the covenant would crumble, that he'd lose this territory he'd spent decades building, and underneath it all want. For me. Not just my blood, but everything I was. At the same time, he felt me. My terror for Anya, my exhaustion, the guilt I'd carried since our parents died, and woven through it all, a fragile, terrifying hope that maybe I'd found somewhere I could finally stop running. When he pulled back, we were both shaking. His eyes were pure silver now, glowing in the dim light. My pulse hammered where his lips had been. "Serafina," he started, leaning in. Our mouths were inches apart when pounding on the door shattered the moment. "Varro," Lucien's voice, urgent. "Federal agents. They have a warrant." The agents found nothing, of course. Varro was too careful for that. But they tore through the estate for 3 hours, looking for evidence of human trafficking, kidnapping, all the crimes Myers had accused him of. They questioned me and Anya separately, asked if we were there against our will. "No," I told them. "We're guests." "Guests who can't leave?" The lead agent pressed. "Guests who don't want to." They left empty-handed, but satisfied they'd made their point. Varro was being watched. Any wrong move would bring federal prosecution. "Myers is smart," Varro said after they'd gone. "She's not trying to prove I'm guilty. She's trying to make me look guilty, destabilize me before the covenant meeting." That night, they came with fire. The purifiers hit the estate at 2 a.m. blessed incendiaries, silver rounds, coordinated assault on 3 fronts. Alarms screamed. Windows shattered. Vampires I'd seen laughing over dinner were suddenly moving with lethal precision, defending their home. I grabbed Anya, tried to get her to the safe room Varro had shown us. But one of the purifiers cut us off, young, zealous, carrying a flamethrower like it was holy scripture. "Vampire sympathizers," he spat, aiming at us. Lucien appeared from nowhere, tackling him. But not before a gout of blessed flame caught Lucien's side, burning in ways normal fire shouldn't. He went down hard, flesh blistering, the kind of wound that would take days to heal even for a vampire. I didn't think, just moved. Grabbed a piece of broken glass and slashed my palm open, pressing bleeding hand to Lucien's wound. The effect was immediate. The burns began closing, flesh knitting back together at visible speed. Lucien's eyes went wide. "Your blood heals us," he breathed. Around us, the battle raged. Varro fought like something out of nightmare, elegant and brutal. But I could feel him through our bond, the pain of losses, the fear that he couldn't protect everyone, the weight of responsibility. When the purifiers finally retreated, we counted the cost. 3 vampires dead, the east wing damaged, and our defenses now mapped, vulnerabilities exposed. "This was reconnaissance," Varro said grimly. "They'll be back." He found me in the garden as dawn approached, false dawn, made possible by the blood still connecting us. His clothes were torn, bloody. He looked exhausted in a way I didn't know vampires could. "I'm sending you away," he said without preamble. "You and Anya. Lucien can arrange new identities, a new city. You'll have money, protection, everything you need to start over. This," he gestured at the smoking estate. "This isn't safe. I can't keep you here." "No, Serafina, no." I stood, faced him. "I'm done running. I've been running for 3 years, and it's gotten me exactly nowhere. Constantine will find us. Myers will spin her lies, and you'll face Isolde's challenge alone. I'm not doing that. You could die. I could die anyway. At least here. I'd die fighting for something instead of just surviving." I caught his hands. "We finish this together, or we don't finish it at all." He searched my face, and through our bond, I felt his conflict. The desire to protect me, warring with the need to keep me close. "Then you need to understand what you're choosing," he said finally. "Tomorrow night, I'll take you into the French Quarter, show you what I truly am, not the politician or the diplomat, the predator. And if you still want to stay after that, then we face this together. Deal." He pulled me close, and we stood in his impossible garden under his impossible sun, both of us bleeding and broken and somehow still standing. "Thank you," he whispered against my hair. "For what?" "For being too stubborn to save. And despite everything, the danger, the death, the impossible odds," I smiled. The French Quarter at midnight was a different world entirely. Not the tourist trap of Bourbon Street with its hand grenades and beads, but the older streets where gas lamps still flickered, and the buildings remembered when they'd been Spanish, French, American, and everything in between. Varro moved through it like a king surveying his kingdom, and I realized that's exactly what he was. "There are rules," he said as we walked, his hand at the small of my back. "Not possessive, protective. The Covenant isn't just politics, it's survival. Without it, vampires would hunt humans to extinction, and humans would retaliate with fire and sunlight until we were nothing but ash and legend." We turned down an alley that smelled like rotting magnolias and something darker. 3 vampires stood over a body, a young woman, maybe 20, throat torn open in a way that was unmistakably feeding frenzy rather than clean kill. The vampires looked up as we approached. One of them male, maybe turned in his 30s, smiled with bloody teeth. "Lord Cassivar. We didn't expect. The Covenant forbids hunting within city limits," Varro said, his voice gone cold and absolute. "It forbids killing for sport. She wasn't food, she was entertainment. She was just a human." Varro moved faster than my eyes could track. One moment he was beside me. The next his hand was through the vampire's chest, wrapped around something that might have been a heart, if vampires still had beating ones. The vampire screamed a sound like tearing metal, and then crumbled to ash. The other 2 ran. Varro let them. The message had been delivered. "That's what I am," he said, turning back to me. His hand was still covered in ash. "Judge. Executioner. The thing that keeps monsters in line by being a bigger monster. If that's too much, it's not." And weirdly, it wasn't. I'd seen what happened when predators had no leash. Moscow had taught me that. Someone has to do it. Something in his expression softened. Not many humans would understand that. I'm not most humans. We left the body for the police to find they'd rule it animal attack like they always did, and continued deeper into the quarter. Eventually we arrived at a building that looked like it had survived Sherman's March and Hurricane Katrina through sheer spite. Iron balconies, crumbling brick, windows that watched like eyes. "Delphine's temple," Varro said. "The witch representative of the Covenant. She's intense." That was an understatement. Priestess Delphine Corbeau was waiting for us in a courtyard overgrown with plants that shouldn't exist. Moonflowers blooming at midnight. Herbs I didn't recognize. A garden that felt alive in ways that had nothing to do with photosynthesis. She was tall, dark-skinned, beautiful in the way storms were beautiful, dangerous and impossible to look away from. Varro. Her voice carried the cadence of old New Orleans, the accent that predated even the vampires. "You brought the luminous one. Bold, foolish, both perhaps. She needs to understand what she's involved in," Varro said. "Oh, she's involved in more than you know, vampire." Delphine's gold eyes fixed on me. "Come here, child, let me taste your truth." I approached, and she grabbed my wrist with hands that were warmer than human, hotter than natural. She pressed her thumb against my pulse point, and her eyes rolled back white. "I see," she breathed. "I see the choice unmade, 2 paths, both blood-soaked. In one, you bind the night-to-day vampire and human, darkness and light, woven together in new covenant. In the other, the veil shatters, war eternal, rivers of ash and bone. Your blood is the key that locks or unlocks the door." "I don't understand." Her eyes snapped back to normal, pinning me in place. "You will. Soon. The luminous one will choose, and the world will burn or bloom accordingly." She released my wrist. "The summit begins at sunset tomorrow." "Varro, you're playing a dangerous game. I've been playing it for 50 years, and now the board is about to flip." She looked at me again. "Protect your sister, child. She is the match that lights the powder keg." The cabildo at sunset looked like something out of a Gothic fever dream. The historic building, all Spanish, colonial architecture and iron lace, had been transformed into a supernatural United Nations. Vampires in the East Wing, their pale faces beautiful and terrible, witches in the West. Delphine presiding over a coven that made the air taste like electricity and dried herbs. And in the center, the human delegation led by Senator Harold White himself, surrounded by bodyguards who clearly had no idea how useless bullets would be if things went south. Varro had brought me and Anya despite my protests. "You're part of this now," he'd said. "Hiding you won't change that." Isolde Theron held court in the main chamber, draped across a chair like a Renaissance painting of decadence. When Varro entered, she smiled with all her teeth. "There he is, the vampire who thinks he's a diplomat." She stood, addressing the assembled crowd. I invoke right of challenge. Varro Cassivar has proven too weak to hold the southern territories. His human bride betrayed him. His enemies attack with impunity. And now he's taken a mortal pet whose blood he uses like a drug. I say he's unfit to lead, and I claim these lands by combat. Tomorrow night, full moon, single combat under the old laws. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Varro's face remained impassive, but through our bond I felt his calculation. This was expected, planned for. I accept your challenge, he said calmly. And I'll prove my strength tomorrow night when if I may interrupt. Konstantin Romanov stepped forward from the shadows, and ice flooded my veins. He looked exactly like I remembered from whispered stories, tall, graying at the temples, wearing a suit that probably cost more than a car. Handsome in the way wolves were handsome right before they ate you. The collector, Senator White said, confused. You're not part of the covenant, but I have information relevant to these proceedings. Konstantin's smile was all business. Information about the assassination attempt on Lord Cassivar. Information that clears his name and exposes the true conspirators. In exchange for what? Varro asked, voice deadly quiet. A simple trade. I have evidence recordings, documents, financial transfers proving Myers-White and her purifier allies orchestrated the attack. I'll testify before your human delegation, clear Lord Cassivar's name completely. In exchange, I want what's rightfully mine. His eyes found Anya in the crowd, the younger Lazarev sister. One luminous bloodline is sufficient for my purposes. You may keep the elder. No, I said immediately. Absolutely not. I'll go. Anya's voice cut through the chamber like a knife. She stepped forward, chin raised. I'll go with him. Anya, don't be insane. Why not? She turned to face me, and her eyes were full of anger and hurt. You said it yourself, Sira. We're property in their world. At least with Konstantin, I'd have power. Purpose. You've kept me invisible my entire life, hidden, protected, suffocated. At least with him, I'd be seen. You'd be enslaved. Like, I'm not enslaved now? Living in a vampire's house, watching you fall for a creature who drinks your blood? Her voice cracked. I'm tired of being your excuse to play martyr. Let me make my own choice. Before I could respond, chaos erupted. The main doors burst open, and Myers-White swept in, flanked by purifiers and federal agents. Her face a mask of righteous fury. Varro Cassivar. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, human trafficking, and... Konstantin's phone beeped once. Loudly. And suddenly every screen in the cabildo, every phone, every laptop the human delegation had brought, lit up with the same footage. Myers in the Lumiere Noir bathroom, making the call that set up the assassination. Myers meeting with Purifier leadership, planning the attack. Emails between her and Senator White discussing cleansing strategies for vampire territories. The silence that followed was deafening. Senator White's face went through several shades of gray before settling on calculated politician. I had no knowledge of my daughter's activities. She acted alone, clearly suffering from mental instability. You lying bastard, Myers screamed. You approved every move. You said vampires were a cancer. Officers, please escort my daughter to psychiatric evaluation, White said smoothly, throwing her to the wolves without hesitation. Myers pulled a gun God knew where she'd hidden it and aimed at her father. If I'm going down. Varro moved. Faster than the agents could react. Faster than Myers could fire. He caught her wrist, twisted, and the gun clattered away. She screamed something about abominations, as actual police, not purifiers. But real NOPD moved in to arrest her. In the chaos, I almost missed it. Almost. Isolde's smile had gone sharp and satisfied. How convenient, she purred. The truth revealed. The human delegation discredited, and now, she snapped her fingers. And suddenly half the room was moving with coordinated precision. We removed the final obstacle. Purifiers flooded the chamber. Not rogue agents, a coordinated strike force. But they weren't aiming at humans. They were targeting Varro's loyalists. Isolde. What are you doing? Varro demanded. Ending a failed experiment. She stepped forward, and her ancient power filled the room like pressure before a storm. The Covenant was always a leash, Varro, a way to make us pretend we're civilized. But we're not. We're apex predators, and it's time we stopped apologizing for it. The purifiers understand they want war, and so do I, because in war, the strong devour the weak, and I'm so very, very strong. All hell broke loose. Vampires and purifiers fighting side by side against Varro's people. Witches throwing power that made the air crack and bleed. Humans screaming, scrambling for exits. Senator White's bodyguards trying to protect him while the entire supernatural world exploded around them. Through it all, I saw Constantine fighting beside Varro, proving Isolde was the real threat. That for all his darkness, he respected the old laws of power and exchange. I saw Lucien taking down purifiers with brutal efficiency. I saw Anya, frozen in terror, watching the world she'd wanted to join reveal its teeth. Then I saw Isolde's lieutenant, a vampire named Gideon, beautiful and vicious, grab Anya by the hair and start dragging her toward the exit. "Anya!" I screamed, but the crowd was too thick, the violence too intense. Varro appeared beside me, blood on his face, eyes blazing silver. "She wants the luminous blood. She'll use Anya to create an army of daywalkers loyal only to her. We have to." "I know." I gripped his hand, felt our bond flare bright and desperate. "We get her back. Together," he promised. The last thing I saw before we plunged into the chaos was Anya's face, terrified and accusatory and heartbroken, disappearing into the New Orleans night. Street Louis Cemetery. No. 1 at 3 a.m. was a city of the dead that felt more alive than it should. Ancient tombs rose like small houses, whitewashed and crumbling, packed so tight that shadows pooled between them like black water. The perfect place for vampires to make a stand, enclosed, defensible, and soaked in enough death that the veil between worlds was tissue-thin. "She'll have guards at every entrance," Lucien said, crouched beside me in the shadow of a mausoleum marked with crosses that had lost their meaning centuries ago. Gideon and at least 6 others, purifier backup, positioned on the perimeter. "Delphine's covens can handle the wards," the priestess added, her gold eyes reflecting moonlight that didn't quite reach us. "But once we break through, it'll be chaos. No coordination, just survival." Constantine stood apart, smoking a cigarette that smelled like cloves and old money. "I want it noted that I'm only helping because Isolde is bad for business. The Covenant keeps things stable, predictable. War is expensive." "Your altruism is touching," Varro said dryly. Then he turned to me. "Serafina, you don't have to come. We can..." "Don't." I grabbed his wrist. "We've had this argument. I'm done running, remember?" Through our bond, I felt his conflict, the desire to protect me warring with the knowledge that I was right. That Anya was my sister, my responsibility, my choice to save or lose. "Then we do this together," he said finally. "But first," he pulled me aside, into the narrow space between 2 tombs where moonlight couldn't reach. "I need you to understand what I'm asking. If I drink from you now, deeply, it will give me power. Enough to face Isolde at her strongest. But the bond will become permanent. Unbreakable. You'll feel me for the rest of your life, and I'll feel you even after yours ends. There's no undoing it. I know. Do you?" His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "This isn't just tactics, Serafina. If we do this, you become mine, and I become yours. In ways that transcend blood or survival. I need to know you want that. Not because you're scared or desperate, but because you choose it." I looked up at him, this ancient, dangerous, impossible creature, who'd somehow become the person I trusted most in a world gone mad. "I choose you," I said. "Not because you saved me, not because I need your protection, but because you saw me as more than what I could give you. You saw me, Varro. Just me, and that's worth more than safety or power or anything else." Something in his expression cracked open. Then his mouth was on mine, kissing me with 8 centuries of loneliness and hunger and hope. When he pulled back, his eyes were pure silver. "Then give me everything," he whispered. I tilted my head, exposing my throat. His fangs pierced my skin, and the world exploded into light. The bond roared to life between us, not the tentative connection we'd had before, but something absolute. I felt his power surge, felt dawn magic flooding his veins, felt his mind brush against mine so intimately that I couldn't tell where I ended and he began. We were one creature, one will, one purpose. When he pulled back, we were both glowing, literally. My blood traced silver lines beneath my skin, and his eyes blazed like twin stars. "Now," he said, "let's get your sister back." The battle began with Delphine's witches shattering the wards, a sound like breaking glass amplified 1,000 times. Then Varro's loyalists poured through the gates, meeting Isolde's vampires in brutal combat among the tombs. Constantine's mercenaries flanked left, engaging purifiers with the kind of efficiency that came from decades of dirty work. And through it all, I moved with Varro, our connection so perfect that we fought like we shared a nervous system. He'd move left, I'd cover right. He'd engage an enemy. I'd find the pressure point that disabled them. We were more than allies. We were lethal. I found Anya in the center of the cemetery, inside the largest tomb, a vault that had been converted into something between church and laboratory. She was strapped to a stone altar, unconscious, with Isolde standing over her holding an enchanted blade that pulsed with dark light. Around them, vials filled with blood. Anya's blood glowed with that same luminous quality mine had. Serafina. Isolde's smile was all teeth. Right on schedule. Did you really think I didn't plan for you? I lunged. But she moved faster, 1,200 years faster. Her backhand sent me flying into the wall hard enough to crack stone. Pain exploded through my ribs, my vision swimming. You're human, she said, advancing with predatory grace. Brave but human, and I am ancient. That's when Anya woke up. Her eyes snapped open, not her normal dark brown, but blazing white gold. The luminous blood activated in her terror, and light erupted from her body like a star going nova. It was sunlight concentrated, purified, deadly. Vampires screamed, burning, fleeing. Even Isolde stumbled back, hissing. But she'd drunk from Serafina's captured blood enough that the light hurt her but didn't destroy her. Anya! I scrambled to my feet, grabbed the enchanted blade Isolde had dropped. Together, my sister tore free of her bonds, and we faced Isolde as one. I used everything Varro had taught me. Pressure points, momentum, speed over strength. Anya's light became a weapon, burning and blinding. We weren't prey anymore. We were warriors, and we were fighting for each other. Outside, Varro found Isolde's lieutenant trying to escape with the stolen blood vials. Their battle was epic, ancient vampire versus ancient vampire, both enhanced by luminous blood. They moved faster than human eyes could track, destroying tombs, cracking stone, trading blows that would have killed anything mortal. You were my friend once, Varro said as they circled each other. 600 years ago, Isolde spat. Before you decided to play human. Before you forgot what we are. I didn't forget. I evolved. He moved, and I felt it through our bond, the surge of power, the dawn magic still flooding his veins. And you stayed exactly what you were, predictable, stagnant, weak. Their final clash shattered a mausoleum. When the dust settled, Varro stood over Isolde with a wooden stake pressed to her chest, not through it, but ready. I could kill you, he said quietly. Part of me wants to, but that would make me exactly what you accused me of being. A monster who chooses violence over justice. Then you're weak, she hissed. No, I'm better than you. He looked at Lucienne. Imprison her. Strip her titles. She'll live out eternity knowing she failed. Dawn was breaking real dawn, not the false one Varro created. But he stood in the growing light without flinching, my blood making him immune. Around us, the battle ended. Isolde's forces surrendered or fled. The purifiers were defeated, scattered. And in the center of it all, Varro Cassivar stood victorious in sunlight for the first time in 8 centuries. Senator White's remaining delegation witnessed everything. The cameras they'd brought captured Varro, sparing Isolde, protecting humans from the violence, maintaining order even in chaos. Constantine approached, bowing slightly. You've proven your strength, Lord Cassivar. I withdraw my claim on the Lazarev bloodline. Some debts aren't worth collecting. He looked at Anya and me. Besides, I prefer my assets willing. These two are too much trouble. Then he was gone, back to Russia, leaving us standing in the ruins of the cemetery as dawn painted everything gold. Anya found me as the adrenaline faded, both of us bruised and bleeding and alive. She didn't say anything at first, just pulled me into a fierce hug. I'm sorry, she whispered. For everything. For not understanding. I'm sorry too, I said. For deciding everything without asking you. For making you invisible when you deserved to be seen. We're done hiding, she said finally. Both of us. But Sira, I need my own path, not just following yours. I know. Varro found us an hour later, after the cleanup crews had arrived and statements had been taken, and the supernatural world had collectively exhaled. He looked exhausted in a way I'd never seen him, triumphant and relieved and weighted with the cost of victory. You have a choice, he said to me. The Covenant needs restructuring. The human delegation needs a bridge, someone who understands both worlds. I'm offering you the position of Covenant ambassador. Power, voice, purpose. But it means staying in this world, with all its dangers and politics and impossibilities. And if I say no, then I give you and Anya new identities, new lives, and you walk away clean. No obligations, no debts. His voice softened. You'd be free, Serafina. Truly free. For the first time since you left Russia. I looked at Anya, who was talking animatedly with Delphine about the Supernatural Academy, a place where she could learn to control her gifts, find others like her, build her own identity separate from mine. Then I looked back at Varro, this ancient creature who'd somehow become my partner, my equal, my choice. I want to stay, I said. Not as your source or your possession, but as what I am, Serafina Lazareva, Covenant ambassador, bridge between worlds, someone who's done hiding and ready to fight for a better future. Through our bond, I felt his relief, his joy, his fierce, protective love that he'd been suppressing for weeks. That's all I've ever wanted to offer you, he said. Partnership, not ownership. Then we have a deal. 1 month later, I stood before the reconvened Covenant in the rebuilt Cabildo, addressing vampires and witches and humans who'd learned to see each other as allies rather than enemies. I'd negotiated new accords, cooperation programs, protections for both species. Anya sat in the audience, healthy and happy, wearing the uniform of Delphine's academy. She'd found her path. I'd found mine. That night, Varro and I walked through his garden as dawn approached. But unlike before, this wasn't false light he'd created. This was real sunrise, made possible because he'd drunk so deeply from me that the effects were permanent. I saved your life that night, I said as the eastern sky began to brighten. In the restaurant, he pulled me close, and I could feel his heartbeat, or what passed for one in vampires who'd found something worth living for. No, he said. You gave me a reason to have one. Then he kissed me as the sun rose over New Orleans, painting the French Quarter in shades of rose and gold. A vampire lord standing in daylight. A woman whose blood carried dawn. No longer hiding in shadows, but creating a new world where both could exist, together, luminous,